Well, folks, welcome to our next session with our community and those of the folks from the diaspora. Today is a very special day in that we will be getting a different way of speaking to you. And this is coming from where we have the youth of the world will be having a chance to listen to some of the youth from Guyana. Today, I will take the opportunity of let our moderator, Sace, to be able to introduce all of our speakers because he has more familiarity with them. Sace, it's over to you.
Well, thank you, Vishnu. I'm Sace Narayan Singh, and I am not going to be introducing these young people. They are powerful enough to introduce themselves. Today is a special show. I have two young men and a very talented young lady who these people represent the evolving face of the new Guyana. Intelligent, but with a social consciousness, and they're all under 35. Now, don't ask me to ask the young lady her age, but these people, this is the real fact. These people represent the face of the new Guyana, and they are representing 70% of this new Guyana. Well, we all know that this is a special year for Guyana. On the voters list, they represent 55% of the voters list. So we have to listen to these young people because they are the next generation. I invite you today to listen to this and I'm using it, this majoritarian voice of Guyana, the youths. So in the studio, we have three talented young people, Kian Jabour, and then there's Renata Burnett and Rudy Balgobin. So I'm going to start ladies before gents. So I'm going to ask the simple question. Who is Renata Burnett? Over to you, Renata.
Okay, I've had this question asked to me several times. Renata is actually a very simple individual. She's an activist. She's a very outspoken person. Of course, because I do poetry, so I'm required to, say things that are on my mind or more so affecting me. I'm a radio announcer. I'm a strong friend, daughter, sister, cousin, all of the basics. But more importantly, I'm very patriotic and very much Guyanese to the bone. So in a nutshell, that is basically who I am.
I just want to add one bit. She's a graduate of St. Joseph High School, also currently a UG student.
Yeah.
And this is the woman who said poetry is freedom. And who knows, she might be the future president of Guyana. So look at Renata carefully. Thank you, Renata. Mm-hmm. Also on the internet superhighway, we have logging on from Georgetown, Guyana also. We have Rudy Balgobin, and I would allow him to introduce himself to the global audience. And just a quick reminder before Rudy comes on, last week this audience topped 35,000 people globally. So Rudy, speak to the 35,000 people.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Says, welcome to the other panelists. I'm glad to be here. Welcome to everyone there in the studio that's watching and everyone else online. My name is Rudy Balgobin. I'm a journalist, web developer, photographer, musician. Was a student, recently concluded my MBA, so not in that phase anymore. And yeah, as Renata said, very patriotic Guyanese would like to see more youth involvement in Guyana and in the future, especially where politics is concerned.
Excellent. And lastly, but not least, we have Kian Jabour, young businessman. I would like to hand you over again. He's also joining us from Georgetown, Guyana, via the Internet Superhighway. Over to you, Kian. Let's hear who is Kian Jabour.
Hi there, guys. Good afternoon to all the panelists and the mediator. So my name is Kian Jabour, and I'm your average typical businessman here in Guyana. I'm young. I came here maybe about, well, I grew up here as a young kid. I was actually born in Ghana, so I'm a dual citizen. Let's just get that out of the way. But nonetheless, I decided to come down here, and I had my daughter here. So first and foremost, I am a father. My daughter was born here in Guyana, and I decided to, I've embarked on multiple businesses here within Georgetown, in and around Georgetown. My latest being my farming project, which I've been doing for the past couple of years. So I guess how I become a little bit more outspoken is that I've recently joined a new political party in Guyana called the New and United Guyana, which recently just launched in January. And I'm extremely excited about it and proud that I can say that I am part of a 5-person steering committee in which I have an executive position in the party. So, actually something of substance. And I feel honored and in a way empowered as a youth that I would be given that type of opportunity to, maybe represent youth on a whole when it comes to the political arena and actually have, a say at the big table, if you will, when the time comes.
Right.
So,
right. Good. But what I want to make sure we all are aware of is that I want to drive this program this week as a conversation between 3 young people rather than me jumping in. So I want to start with the concept of opportunities for young people. Rudy is in music, Kian is in business, and Renata is in poetry, social commentary. So tell us about the opportunities for young people in Guyana. Is it enabling? Is it empowering? Is it an environment that you feel can change a little bit? Let's start with you, Kian, because you were last on the floor.
All right.
Tell us about the opportunities for business, for anything, music, poetry, any incubation of anything. Tell us about the opportunities you're finding. You're on the ground. Let's hear you.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to definitely say how honored I am to be on the panel here with 2 artists. I could not explain, having done my formal education in Canada, actually, understand how important the arts are to society. And, I think it's something that often is overlooked here in Guyana. I mean, the civil aspect and what the social aspects and impacts are of allowing, people to freely express themselves in their different ways, whether it be poetry or music or dance or, whatever it may be. So as far as I can speak about from my personal experience, doing business here in Guyana, as anywhere else in the world, it has its challenges. It's not impossible. I'm going to say that first and foremost. But I can definitely say that there could be many more avenues that are open in order to make this process somewhat more, easy, if you will, or at least give us the opportunity to express ourselves and I like to say to make our own mistakes. And what happens here is the business environment is fairly unforgiving. And I guess the first and foremost point when it comes to the business community would be financing. In order for us to find seed money here in Guyana, there's not very many people taking risk here when it comes to investing their money. I mean, when it comes to the banking system, for example, you have a house that you worked for your whole life. Maybe you inherited from your family. You go to the bank, you need a couple $1 million to start your business up. Mm-hmm. And they're telling you, well, you have to sign your whole house away that's worth $50 million for $10 million. I mean, just to put it into context. And to be honest with you, you're asking me to risk everything I have, but then at the same time, not making the business environment appealing or rewarding enough for me to take those kinds of
matching risk with returns.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And I mean, we can talk about the tax system. We can talk about the security, right? These are all issues when it comes to what we're facing here in Guyana. I am myself. I have a farm now here in Guyana, and the economy has taken a fairly large downturn recently. And I don't want to say it's because of any mistakes by political parties, but to be honest with you, the whole political tension right now has caused a lot of investor fear, right? Nobody really has too much confidence to invest, and because of that, things are drying up slowly. I mean, even down to the road. I mean, you mentioned just now that youths are 70% of the electorate. The fact of the matter is, I just read an article stating that 56% of our electorate of citizens between 18 and 40 are unemployed or actively looking for jobs. All right. So it's huge numbers that we're talking about that are making a big impact on us here. And what we don't realize is how many of our aspects of our lives it's affecting. I mean, look at these guys here as artists. I mean, if I'm about to tell you, I've actually, to be honest with you, I've heard of both of them. I may have seen something online on or have had conversations about both of these panelists before, and I can honestly say, I guess I can reach your questions out to you guys. Do you guys feel like you're compensated enough for the work that
so
you guys do?
Renata first, let's hear your answer to that. He's asking that question.
Definitely not. I get asked that question a lot. Of course not. I feel as though as an artist, you always get the crappy end of the bargain. It's always persons reaching out to you, and the conversation or the tone of that reaching out is very savvy, like they're begging you, but in this professional manner. I like your work. Your work is really good. We would like you to come through and perform for us, for exposure. And I get really tired of hearing the word exposure, because when you hear exposure, it means no money. Oftentimes they correlate. So when you hear, see, he laughed, he know what I'm talking about. When you hear, we're gonna do the platform for you and blah blah blah. But you don't. And I feel as though that comes with a level of not having respect for that artist or that cameraman or that videographer or that editor, because you just feel as though, I'm putting in the time to do my work and I should be paid adequately. And somebody's requesting your work and your time and they want to pay you next to nothing, or worse yet, the people who know you personally, and they go, we should get this guy because we know you. So definitely not. Definitely not.
Wow.
You do it because you love it.
Rudy, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure Renato would agree with me on this. From a musician perspective, there's not a lot of avenues for you to go to, and places like, if for say you're living abroad, where you can get deals and you could just go in the studio and record your music. First of all, for the type of music that we do here in Ghana, it's not that popular. And there's no place that we can record our music. So basically we have to do it at home. And there's not a lot of opportunities for us here. And to get to overseas or launch your music elsewhere via online is very expensive, very costly. So it's definitely something we need to look at, whereas we give our youths more opportunities that they're in the arts and crafts sector in Ghana. It's something that's been mainly overlooked, I would say, in our society as a whole. Touching on what Jabur said about the opportunities that are there, is that, the thing is that one would argue that, yes, you have opportunities as youth, but the cost to get to those opportunities is usually outweighs the benefit. So he made an example that to get funding for a business, you would have to, mortgage your house, and then if your business failed, then you have nowhere to live. Be like that for youth. So there should be more, more support from the government, subsidies and stuff like that.
Right.
Available to youth.
Right. I want to. Okay, go on. Sorry.
What I'd like to add to that is that we're not turning a blind eye to risk. We know that if we're starting a business, it does require a level of risk on our part. I mean, but again, like you had mentioned, there's risk and reward. And if the environment is not stable for these guys, for any of us to take loans out, you know what I mean? Because, for example, I set up a business here. I got to worry every day that, someone's going to come and kick in my front door and steal everything I have. And, how do I protect myself? Like, there's no 911 I can call, right? Let's say these guys want to open a little studio. Let's say they invest some money. They go to the bank. First of all, the bank is going to look at them and say, well, give me your house and I'll send you some speakers. And I'll give you enough money to buy. Like, it's a crazy trade-off. Not to mention, in their industry, let's say they do buy some amplifiers, let's say they do find some mixers, they buy the right technology, and then what? They get blackout and it blows up 2 days from now. Who's paying them back for that?
There's no insurance on that.
Yeah, but insurance by itself here in Guyana, we're not even making enough money to deal with that, right?
Us as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if they've already mentioned that they're not being paid for these things, who exactly can take risk?
So I want to ask Renata this question. Renata, I read in the papers the other day that you did a fundraiser at Theatre Guild as one of the means of supporting your academic enliftment or empowerment.
Yeah.
Right.
I did a
how was the response to that fundraiser?
The response was really good, and I feel like it was that way because of the fact that I am who I am, or more so I do what I do and I'm recognized in that light. It was actually at where was it? It was at the Duke. So I did it in Like,
so your school fees are all now paid off, right?
For the year, I had managed, because it was a do or die type of situation. But the response is really good.
Very, very good. Now, I wanted to, because so Renata, I want to do a follow-up question to you on this. So I know you work, you go to school, you also do all your social advocacy. What is the main theme that you find that have big pockets of social issues facing the young people of Guyana?
I feel, for me, what I've realized, mental health is definitely one of those things. Young people struggling with anxiety and depression and these other things. Politics, strangely, I mean, 2 years ago, young people didn't really care much about politics, or go back 5 years ago, we didn't really care much, who was in charge. But now they're more involved, and people like hearing stuff like that. Social ills in terms of things that we deal with personally. So those are topics for me that drives the crowd, because people can relate to it.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Rudy? What are some of the social issues that coming across your bandwidth in your sphere?
Yeah, one of the biggest things for me, and from what I've encountered, is youth unemployment. A lot of students have been graduating from the university and they haven't gotten any job or nowhere to work or no opportunity to work. Just recently, I read an article from the DPI, Department of Public Information, saying that they trained 25,000 young people, but only 125 got jobs. I mean, that, in my view, that's not something to be proud about. That is percentage-wise 0.02 or 3%.
The technical unemployment rate at the end of 2018 was 56,000 people in Guyana. And that's not a make-up number. That number was sourced from the Bureau of Statistics when it added what you call unemployment and underemployment. Listen to this part. Young women in that category is 30% of their 30%, which means 1 in every 3 young women or young woman who's looking for work cannot find work. So yes, it's a serious issue, but sorry, continue.
Yeah, as I was saying, that was one of the major issues that's coming out. And not to get too political or anything, but the coalition government campaigned on giving youths an opportunity and giving us jobs. And I heard the young lady said that she had to do a fundraiser just to get money to pay for her tuition, which was also another promise of the coalition government to give us free education, rather. And then at the time when that was happening, I was doing my master's, I was working and paying for it as well. And then VAT was placed on private education. So that was an additional burden to me to complete my master. I had to scramble, I had to even get another job. I had to go and get a second job just so that I could finish paying for it. And we were protesting. I was a part of that team that organized the protests and stuff like that. We met with the Prime Minister. He said he can't do anything for us now. He'll try next year. And at the next budget, by then I had already finished. The damage was already done, to be honest with you. That is from a personal perspective.
Ian, are you connecting with these social issues that young people are faced with in Guyana? Tell us about your experiences.
Absolutely. I can more than see well, student loans are something that affect people all over the world. But my issue is that I'm not sure why, in a society as small as Guyana, are we having that big of a problem with this? And I'm gonna say this not to insult anyone, but we all know UG can be much, much better than it is. I have many friends that are going there. It's really UG is a great program. Thankfully, it's here in Guyana. A great school. But the fact of the matter is, for what they're offering to go into that kind of debt and then not have a job when you come out, you're leaving, you're setting us back like 10 steps before we even, as you said, before we even step out the gate, right? The damage is already done. So the question now is, how do you now counteract and counterbalance these issues? And that's where I think everyone is saying that they're lacking. Really and truly, it all, as we spoke here, most of it boils down to funding, right? And access to money and jobs create that, all right? So
but there's no shortage of money in Guyana. The 2019 budget was $1.5 billion. So there's no shortage of money in Guyana. Let's not ever run around thinking that there's a shortage of money in Guyana.
Yeah, so my solution when you ask about money is that more investment needs to be made into the private sector. All right. These are the people that need the opportunity to expand their businesses, to grow and hire people. All right. If that's not happening, I'm sorry, the government's role, in my opinion, should never be to create jobs. All right. We're supposed to be focusing on the crime sector and education and energy and, you know, the fundamental areas like that, but not necessarily. I mean, I think you had said you did your MBA. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what are you doing, Renata, in school? Sorry, I didn't.
I'm doing communication.
Like, these are huge areas. I mean, how could they not be finding business? Communication. These are both critical, necessary part of any business. All right. And these guys are so the private sector, in my opinion, needs to be boosted. They need the opportunity, whether it's, you know, subsidizing, whether it's access to financing, credit, whether it's, you know, tax breaks, you know, concessions, whatever you want to call it. I mean, this is what needs to happen in order to solve many of these issues.
This is an amazing show. We're 21 minutes into the show, and there were so many issues that were dealt with. We're going to break away in a short while to Devin to see if he has any questions from members of the world, because people are looking into this show on 3 ways, which is Facebook, then there's YouTube, then we get telephone calls, and you have a live audience. And so we're going to break away and ask give those people a chance to ask some questions. But I want to dive into UG before we go to Devin. Let us talk UG. I went to UG. I'm a proud graduate of University of Guyana. But it was always a challenge. I suffered through the days when we had non-functional toilets, the stables, which was in those days, I used to think it was fit for donkeys rather than humans, but I presume it's better now. Library without adequate textbooks. It was a tragedy. Are you guys faced with those challenges today at UG? Renata, you go first.
UG is not, like, you know, the most exciting place to go to. I often hear of other campuses on other islands, not even talking North America or Canada wise, but, you know, other islands. And I feel like, you know, there's a lot to offer. Aside from the facilities, in terms of the washrooms, in my opinion, they haven't, you know, they're functional, but they're not that, you know.
So there has been improvement, you
yeah,
say,
there has.
in my days, it was not functional.
That is actually sad. But it is functional, but still there's improvements, you know, because there is exposed wire at the washroom with whatever is running through there, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to go do something and then I get shocked. It's crazy. You know. And then for me, in terms of going to the University of Ghana, I feel as though there's a lot going on, you know, in terms of joining programs or groups, but persons are generally not interested. And I talked to my uncle about his days in UG when he talks about having campfires and having, you know, fest being so big that the parking lot is filled and there was some type of community. There isn't now. Nobody cares. People go to UG, go study, go do their exam, and they leave. Like, you're out, when you go there, you just want to leave because that is the atmosphere you're faced with. You just want to go because it's just depressing.
Yeah, even in my days when I went to UG, there was that sense of family because we had a family around the cricket team, we had a family around the Hindu Society, we had a family around the that in those days we call social science family. So we had a lot of activities on the side, even though we were working people. But tell us, Rudy, I don't know if you went to UG, but you did an MBA elsewhere. But what is your interaction with the education system in Guyana? How is it functioning?
Well, I never went to UG, nor did I went to any government schools. So I won't be the best person to give an opinion on. But
as an adult now, what is your thoughts on the education system?
Well, the thing is, I have a lot of friends that are currently in UG and that has graduated from UG, and as the young lady pointed out, it's not as bad as you described back in the days, but it could be better. I see the university has been having a lot of trouble. The board, the mismanagement and stuff like that at the university. So we definitely need to look into that and how the funding and how the monies are being spent there. And these constant increases for elementary services to students, I believe is totally unfair.
Ian, I want to ask you a more pointed question. If you were in a position of power at UG, tell us 3 things you will do for the university immediately.
Well, I don't think I'm mistaken when I say in the Constitution, it actually states that education is free for Guyanese. All right. I mean, I'm young and I'm not sure when it would have happened. I'm not sure when the fees were included in it. But the fact of the matter is, as you mentioned earlier in this interview, is that money has never been a problem in this country. So the real question is, for all the years and going back to from independence onward, I mean, how come money has not been properly invested in education? I mean, this is a fundamental area in order to build a society. All right. If the youth and people are not exposed and given the opportunities, where exactly do you think we're going to grow? Where are we going to end up? So what is, oddly enough, I have a youth group that I started for a new and united Guyana, and I have quite a few UG students that are part of the organization. So we were having this same conversation just recently about the facilities and what's happening up at UG, and one of them said, I walk into UG every day, and all I keep telling myself is that they're training me to be a government worker. And I'm saying,
oh my God.
Wow.
I found it funny, but at the same time shocking. But because he came to that realization that he's sitting there going, they have me down a very narrow path. We have tunnel vision on in the school. The environment is not conducive to expand your mind to different areas. And like I said from the beginning of this conversation, I'm here with two artists. I mean, how many programs? I mean, I know UG has a little bit of an art program, but come on, there's so much more that needs to be done. What I believe UG needs is a public opinion. I think the student society and the student union needs to come together and hold one head and make their demands, because nobody knows better than the
But
current...
if you're in a position of power at UG, what are 3 things you would want happening at UG right away?
Right off the bat, it's administration. I think that's for most of our public facilities. I think administration needs to be looked at and the right people need to be put in the right positions. I think we talk about this all the time. I mean, we have a taxi driver making comments on the law department. I mean, I'm just using that as an example. They're just unaware of what is needed. So we have basically the blind leading the blind. All right, and that all boils down to administration. If you ask me, I think that whole administration needs to be revamped and relooked at. And I think the campus itself needs a lot of investment right now in order to bring up to a learning, a learning environment. You must feel open and free. When you get to UG, you must want to learn. You must want to think. There should be, I have actually, my girlfriend goes to UG currently, and she's actually tells me, like, they're doing a little project right now. She's in geography. She's doing geography. And what they're doing right now is she's putting together a proposal. For example, UG doesn't even have free drinking water, right? So she's putting together a proposal right now to put some fountains in place in order to, something as basic as that. I mean, how am I coming every day? These kids spending all their money, even on transportation from all over the country, and they can't buy water as well. I mean, that's craziness to me.
Yeah, I think we should have had at least that's one. If you can get that at UG, we call potable water, which is drinkable. That would be a great improvement. But we're 30 minutes into the show, and Devin, do you have any comments, questions for the audience, for the panelists?
I have a few comments. The first one is...
Introduce yourself and then go straight into it.
My name is Kimberly Satar, and I'll be reading the comments that we've gotten on the program so far. Harry Nagay says, it's an excellent program. The youth should be empowered. They are the leaders of tomorrow. We, during the 60s and 70s, did not have this kind of exposure. Aneta Tins says, well said, Renata. And Rafia Khan says, very true, Kian. Ramraji Das Gupta asks, what about the crime? How safe are we? And Rafia Khan says, we need more young people like you all to share their views. Let our leaders of this country see the various issues we are faced with daily, and let's hear what they will do to assist us. I am proud of you guys. Keep up the good work.
All right, so let's run with that exact question. What about the crime? How is it affecting you? Let's start with you, Rudy, then Renata, and then Kian.
Yeah, first off the bat, definitely we have a crime situation here in Guyana. I mean, the minister has been on record constantly saying that there have been a downturn in crime. But if you were to just look through the daily news here in Guyana, every day you would see someone getting robbed, someone being stabbed, someone home broken into, someone the car stolen, and stuff like that. And there's something that we really need to look at more at. The current administration haven't done anything in terms of looking at crime, in my view. They just have these programs running concurrently, but nothing concrete and nothing solid that impacts in the society to say that, hey, this is our strategy and this is working currently. It's helping us fight crime and stuff like that. It's just.
Well, why would you say that? In 2018, the government said they spent $17 billion in the crime fighting portfolio.
Yes, as I said earlier, they're spending money, but they just have this program running and it's not impacting anything. Someone needs to look at that more and see that we're getting value for money, basically. We have a lot of funding. We're putting a lot of funding into the Guyana Police Force and the armed forces, but it's not translating into helping or fighting.
Well, I also realized that people are kind of losing confidence in the police, because when I was in Guyana in March 2019, which a few weeks ago, I went up to the quarantine, and the people who were staying by was telling me during that week there were 4 robberies in the village, but the people just didn't go to the police because they said, well, what are we going to go to the police for? We're going to be wasting time. So there's a high number of crime in Guyana that is unreported. So the figures, even if they're coming down, it's not a reality check. It's an underreported figure.
Yeah,
but
anyway, that's exactly
what about crime for you, Renata?
I don't. For me, I think crime has, like, every country has crime, and ours has been, on the highs and lows for a very long time. But I feel everything, in my opinion, has a root issue or a root cause, and we're not going to just dismiss the fact that some people are just, some people are just delinquents, and some people, they're just going to come up to you and demand something that they didn't work for. Like Jabbar rightfully said, he's afraid of somebody breaking in and stealing all the stuff that he has. But more so, if we're going to tackle crime, I feel like for a very long time, we haven't been doing it the right way.
Can I just ask, insert a question? Is it drugs? A lot of young people are doing drugs and then doing crime? I don't know. I'm just asking.
No, I don't think so. So. I know there's for me, I think that more programs needs to be implemented in terms of community programs whereby persons are trained in skills. There's a lot of times persons don't even know what to do, so this is the only thing they know of. And if you implement or you put that focus or more so finance into communities and you have persons learning a skill, these things should be done in schools. We talk about these things in schools, but I would like to see persons going into schools and teaching people more than economics, teach you business management in terms of finance, how you handle an account, or not until you get out there and you don't know what to do, so this is your job. I had a friend who was working at the Ministry of Agriculture, and he robbed the bank and he got shot and killed, and persons were completely amazed because this was a really smart individual. Mm-hmm. But it's all about avenues and them not being available. So to me, that's kind of one of the root causes.
Before we go to Kian, I want to share an example of a situation that I had at Bishop's High School. When I was in Form 1, we had something called a guidance counselor class. And I'll tell you something, it's something that I use even onto today. And I'm not as young as you guys. In that class, we were taught etiquette, how to eat with knife and fork, how to treat women, our fellow girls. I remember the teacher exactly, Miss Thomas. We were taught, people come from different social backgrounds. Some people from single parent. I came from a single parent home. So immediately you had that kind of counseling and guidance. You know that they got your back. I do not think this is something that is continuing today. And hence a lot of young people have issues that they're working through, but they need a safe pair of hands to help them work through this thing. And and that's not necessarily there for them anymore. Do you think so, Renata? Before we
I do honestly agree with that. I've had multiple discussions with my peers about this. Sometimes in schools, you don't want to talk to a teacher because teachers talk and they congregate among themselves, and then you don't feel
they
that.
Talk your name.
Exactly. You walking around and the teacher's looking at you funny, and you already know something happened, or whatever you confided in that teacher was, it's in the office now. Sometimes persons don't need that. They don't need a friend. They need somebody who is professional and more so equipped to deal with when I say I'm depressed. It's not me overreacting. It's not me being dramatic. I want somebody to talk to. Where those persons are trained. You don't just have social workers that doesn't know how to handle depression or persons with anxiety attacks. We have somebody who's trained in that field. And like you said, we don't have that in schools. We really don't. Most schools don't have that. Most public schools don't have that. And if you're a public school and you're below the list of not in the top 5, you don't have that. So who do you talk to?
Kian, you're on the floor.
This is such a deep, deep issue, okay? I mean, there's so many areas. So what I want to do is first, there's 3 areas I want to touch. First, I want to touch on what Renata had said and yourself says, is that education, I believe, is the foundation of everything, okay? Unless we're educated from young, moving all the way up. I'm not saying old people can't learn or, elders can't learn, but we need to start at our foundation level. And exactly what you said, guidance counselors in the school, basic moral teachings, right from wrong. This is a good thing, this is a bad thing. And I think we've already missed that from this generation. I can tell you right now, I have so many examples of kids that just in my neighborhood that I try to help as much as possible. I even go into their schools in the public system, and they're just half the time there's no teachers there with them. These kids are 8, 9, 10 years old, right? No teachers there. They just kind of go to school, causing trouble, throwing bricks at one another. We all did that as kids, but at the same time, there were definitely hands that, kind of crack the whip when we cross the line, right? It's reality. Mm-hmm. So education is my first issue. My second issue is opportunities. If we give education, we talk about crime and why there's crime in Guyana. Well, first of all, with such a high unemployment rate, the next word that comes to mind is desperation. All right, we're not necessarily dealing with crazy people that are addicted to drugs that are robbing us. This is more people that are just trying to make money for their homes. They need food. They need to feed
They're
their
buying milk for the baby.
That's it, literally. And you know what? I always use the example of, when I was in Canada, I would always be scared of being mugged by someone when I was walking downtown, like in Toronto, for example, because it was always a drug addict that, would walk up and just stab you for no reason. Those are the stories you heard. In Guyana, what I always found is that anyone robbing you on, it's not a black and white situation, but I always say, given the person's circumstances, I'm sure that you can reason with a lot of these criminals, which I know a lot of people do. And you can just say, listen, lie down on the floor, take everything you want. They're not actually there to hurt you. They're just here to take your stuff and they're going because that's their only opportunity. All right. And I find a lot of crime happens because of desperation. So the last thing, and this is the most important to me, is that we put our police force, like they are anywhere else in the world, are there to enforce the law. They're not there to create the law. They're not there to they're there to enforce what is already, the systems that have already been put in place. So what happens here now is that I find the corruption all stems, and the corruption being, lack of people investigating crimes, lack of any effort being made to, solve any problems, whether it be traffic or serious crimes. And that's because I find that these police don't value their jobs, and not wrongfully so. The entire police force is grossly underpaid for what they do. All right, they have no reason, they have no benefit, no real benefits. They have no reason to want this job other than the fact that they can receive bribes, and that does add up at the end of the day. $1,000 from 100 cars is $100,000. So that's what happens in the system right now. But let's just think for a second, if we can raise their salaries a little bit, and then more importantly, and this is what I've learned just from my exposure, is that give them benefits. If you can say, listen, what we're going to do is your kids are going to be educated at UG for free education. If you're a police officer, we're going to give you medical health, dental, glasses for you and your family. You know what I mean? We're going to give you housing. I mean, Jesus, we have so much, land here. Why are we, these public servants that have been working for, why not after 10 years, can we not offer them?
I think that's an excellent idea because policemen put their lives on the line for the population. And I believe at minimum, each and every police officer who served more than a year deserve a piece of land to live on.
Give them some incentives. It's benefits. You want them to want the job. So you better believe now, when you give them the incentive to keep their jobs, you better believe that in the end, somebody walks up and says, look, $1,000, and they can say, nope, I ain't taking the $1,000. I want this job.
Yeah,
but I know corruption is illegal. So that, these are basic ways, but they're overlooked.
Yep. I think we have an in-house question. After you finish, Rudy, we have to go to a question from the Town Hall audience. But continue your point.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to what the guys have already said. What I've traditionally noticed is that one of the driving factors of crime within youth is poverty and unemployment, as Kian and both Renata said. So if we can create opportunities for the youth, so education is one of the surest way of alleviating itself from poverty, and providing jobs for youth, you'd have less crime among the youth population. So I just wanted to add that in before we move on.
Okay, Devin, I heard you have a Town House audience question. Please, we open to that.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this wonderful exchange of ideas. One, I want to confirm what the young man said. Yes, it's in the Constitution that education should be free from nursery to university level. Secondly, unemployment is a great, great problem among youths. And I know you all have linked it to unemployment and poverty. That is important. Over 30% of the people who commit these crimes are really unemployed or live in poverty. But there are 50% who live in poverty and are unemployed do not commit crime. So you have to add other variables to it. It's not simple as unemployment and poverty. There are other factors operating. Now, my question about UG, I will always support that students should be given free education. Now with all money coming in, the government can very well afford to give these students free loan. That is the reason why, according to the IDB report, over 80% of the graduates from the University of Guyana are overseas. They are forced to leave the country because they can't find jobs. So you have a massive brain drain. UG is only producing people for the outside the international market and not for the local market. And I believe whoever is the administration, they got to do a better job with our youths. Youths have been sidetracked all over. All the political parties paid very little attention to the needs and aspirations of the youth. And I think that has to be changed. Now, what I'm interested in, what are some of the suggestions you have to end youth employment? I agree with that other young man who said that it's not the job of government to provide jobs, it's not the responsibility of the government to provide jobs. That may be true, but government has to set the example. This government, for example, said that youth employment will be a priority. And while we know that the private sector is the engine for economic growth and they should expand, they ain't got the incentive now to expand because of the political climate. So everything is dumped in. Now, to bridge that gap, the government has to come in to create the conditions, whether direct employment or not. I mean, they are doing a bit with creating, expanding the police force, the national service, the youth corps, etc. Those are important things, but the government got to do a better job than that. I would like to hear your views from a young person's point of view, what the government can do to improve the unemployment, especially among the youth population. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Tara Singh. So let's start with you, Rudy, and then move around to Renata and then Riyadh. He asked a question.
Yeah, definitely. The first thing I think that should be done is that the government needs to make available to the business community more subsidies, more concessions, as Kian has been arguing for earlier. That would then enable them to hire more people and all of that. Now, government can increase employment indirectly by also increasing government spending and create a stable economy where we don't have what is happening right now. The economy is on a downturn. There's not enough opportunities for the business community. There's no new investors coming in. We're losing jobs. We have more and more people coming out qualified and cannot get jobs. And as the gentleman said, they migrate to somewhere else. And once they go over there and they find an opportunity, it's hard to get them back to Guyana. even with I heard a lot of people arguing that, oh, most of our young people would come back to Guyana now that we have oil. But that's not true. Oil can only produce a certain amount of jobs. We need somewhere else to get everyone working.
I want to jump in there because I want to dispel a myth, and especially for the young people who are listening to this program. Oil is going to make Guyana extremely rich, but that richness will not happen in 2020 or 2021 or 2022 or 2023. It will start happening around 2025. Let's be very absolutely clear. And the reason for that is, like every business, you guys all did some kind of business in your life. You have to pay back the initial investment first. That is where most of the money will be going in the initial years to pay back the many $billion that the investor had to do in. You see, the problem, nobody's seeing the scope of the investment out there in the sea, but it's many, many billions US dollars are being pumped into this, a big boat to accept all the oil, then the rig to suck the oil out. So it's a lot of money. That has to be paid back first. The bank has to be paid back first before Guyana can start seeing money. So yes, Guyana will be very, very rich after 2025, but that is not happening in 2019 or 2020. So I just wanted to stick that in.
Yeah, well, with that said as well, we're coming into a windfall of money maybe in 2025 or probably later, I would argue.
Maybe, yeah.
But the thing is, it's all about management. As you said, we just passed a 1 point something billion US budget. But the management of the budget is what's important, because we can use that money and create fairly a lot of jobs for young people, but that hasn't been happening. But what has happened is we have lost 30,000 jobs already, and more people are graduating, as I said earlier, and they're not getting the opportunity to work. And that leads to other social problems such as crime, and we get poverty on the increase and stuff like that.
But this show is about youth, so I want to make sure we down dial a little bit, and I want to focus on. I want to ask a straight question to you, Renata. Yeah. If you were in a position of power, what would you want done for the cultural sphere, the social sphere, the sports, youth? Those environments. What would you want done so that and others can join in? I mean, if all three of you are in position of power, let's say so tomorrow, by some magic, somebody says, okay, we want you guys to make policy decision for culture, sport, youth affairs. Tell us what are some of the things you'd like done.
I'm not sure about the sports, but more so
that's
culture.
Fine.
Like, I don't know who will handle sports, but for culture, what I've seen is that there's little opportunity when it comes to that sector. More so, Guyana is a melting pot filled with all these different people with amazing talents, and you have people investing heavily in outsiders, more so foreigners or these other artists. And I cringe when I see shows whereby you don't even have a Guyanese headlining or opening and all these other things, but you have these people here. This is how they make their monies. And more so, you have people who are artists. We have the Borough School of Arts. I feel more art schools should be open, because a lot of parents are under the impression that if you want to do dancing, if you want to do art, if you want to do poetry, you can do that as a side hobby, nothing heavily invested, because that does not pay. And that's the mentality. So you see parents not allowing their children to do certain things. I know somebody who was going to UG, and UG isn't what they wanted to do. They wanted to drop. Their mother said, you know what, listen, you have to do UG. You could do drawing on the side. And in terms of the culture, we need to have things monthly, not annually, not once a year we're having these things. You need to have monthly art shows. Panorama should be more annually, having people invest in art more so, because a lot of people like our form of art. A lot of people are amazed, and why isn't this on a more wider scale? But because we don't invest in it. You ask persons, you want to come to a poetry night or you want to go to an art show, the ticket says $1,500. People will cry. Why is it $1,500? What am I paying $1,500 for? And you see that happening every single time. And artists within themselves don't want to do that. I don't want to have to go through the struggle of proving to you why you should pay me for my talent. Something that you do enjoy, but you're not going to pay for it.
Well, I enjoy the Link Show a lot.
Exactly. And that is what we see. And in terms of culture, I feel money should be heavily invested. It should be poured out within those things so persons can say. And a lot of people you find, especially young people, they hate their jobs. They hate doing this clerk work. They hate customer service. They hate their jobs. But they can't depend on their hobbies, something that they love, to make money for them. And I'm one of those persons. I don't hate my job. But the last job, I didn't like it. I didn't like it, but poetry wasn't going to pay me. So I had to be miserable doing something. So later on in life, I could start doing poetry, which is what I love. And I feel as though we shouldn't have to have that or make that choice. So now you have monies invested in there. So there's regular art programs and shows. Young people know, listen, I'm going to get money when I do this. I'm getting money from here, there, because monies are there to be received. And that is what I feel should happen. You should have more panoramas. You should have more art festival, folk night festival, all these things, because slowly with globalization, we're taking from everybody's culture and we're just forgetting ours because, nobody cares.
That's amazing. Kian, before you go on, I want to put Renata on the spot. Renata captured me many years ago when she did a poem called Guys Like You. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, I did. Yes, I do.
Well, if you remember, can you give us some of it? You don't have to give us the whole thing.
Oh, okay. So Guys Like You was a piece that stemmed from where I worked before. And I honestly thought that I shouldn't say good morning to this one person because he probably wouldn't say it back because he was such a player and persons talk about him in the weirdest way. So I think the piece went, guys like you don't fall for girls like me. Space, teeth, and college degrees are qualities that apparently aren't deemed as sexy. I heard you like them Coca-Cola shaped, and I guess I'm just a Pepsi. Heard you prefer girls with the fabricated bodies portrayed as artwork, but never hard working, and she needs to have a thick behind because twerking is a necessity. It's number one on the list of your priority. You're the type of guy that likes those type of girls that goes out more but wears less. The cute ones that you can wear on your wrist like a Rolex, and she needs to be a freak. Because you're the type of guy that likes that kinky type of sex. Yes, I guess that guys like you don't fall for girls like me. The ones that are spiritually in tune, been doing right. Don't need a man, but would like someone special in life. The type of girl that you can settle down with and make a wife. But guys like you believe that everybody can be bought. So you'll spoil a girl, but just so you can get what you want. Flaunt in your father's wealth because you've never worked a day in your life. So you never earned nothing. Never learned how to treat a girl. You're self-righteous and self-entitled. You believe that the world revolves around you. I think that's what I remember so far.
Amazing.
I
hope 30,000 people watch this show globally to hear that voice.
Agreed.
It's amazing. Kian, so the question that we had on the floor was, what about if you were in a position of power? What would you do for the young people with regards to the cultural, social, and sporting environment, youth environment also? How can you? What are some of the ideas you think should come to the front of the table to empower youths more?
All right. I'd first like to answer Mr. Tarrant's question from previously of what I think the youth, the government could do to help with the youth unemployment rate. And this is an interesting one because sometimes, as much as we like to come in with a very optimistic point of view and, enthusiastic, we want to say, okay, well, the whole system needs to change. It needs to be scrapped. We need to start over. It's so archaic. But the fact of the matter is, let's be realistic. You can't change, Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't change everything overnight. So what can the government do right now to help encourage youth employment? And one of the things that you can do, because it's such a large area of our society, is the public sector. All right, as much as investing in the private sector is a great idea, and I fully endorse that and encourage that, if you want to do something immediate as well, you can simultaneously invest in the public sector. So, for example, nurses and teachers, all right, along with police, all right? But let's focus on nurses and teachers. These are areas that, like we had mentioned, these kids are going to school, they're becoming educated, all right? Teachers College, I think it's Cyril Potter's. I mean, I believe that people our age are who should be teaching, the even younger ones, all right, the babies. The reason being is that we can actually relate a little bit more to them, all right? We had brought up the social issues just now. Renata mentioned about depression and issues like that. What you find a lot of time is that, as much as everybody has their value, but we're a little bit more in touch with what's happening in the world, whether it be technology and exposure. So we can relate to these kids a little bit more. And so why not have the youth empower the youth, if you will?
Yes, finally somebody said
so we can invest in the public sector, make the teaching jobs more appealing, make more people interested in getting out there and jumping into the hundreds of schools all over the country. You know what I mean? Encourage people to say, all right, well, here's what. If you want to go and work in St. Cuthbert Mission, we're going to pay you a little bit more because you took your education and you went out there and you put your life on hold, and we're going to reward you for it. You know what I mean? And that's how we're going to grow and expand this whole concept of educating each other. So that to me is a big area we should look at, the public sector, because it's a system that currently exists that only minor changes would require to make a big difference. All right?
All right. So let me ask a tough question. This is the first tough questions for the program. We got to ask a couple of tough questions. So why are we here? The world wants to know what you guys are thinking. You are, as I said, 70% of Guyana. We had a very unique year. We had a no confidence vote on December 21st, 2018. And the world really wants to know, because we've heard enough from all these other people, especially, I would say, the over 60-year-old group. They have overworked this whole debate. I want to hear from you, the under 35. What are you thinking with regards to this no confidence vote? Let's start with you, Rudy, then Renata, and back to Riyadh.
Okay. Sure.
What are you thinking with regards to the no confidence vote? Your thoughts?
Well, it's provided for in the Constitution, so it's definitely something that was there to be utilized. What has happened after so far is what I'm not, I don't agree with. The government, in my view, has really shown where they lie and what they think of the people of Guyana, for example. And why do I say that? On the night of the vote itself, they said that, okay, we accept defeat and we're going to go to election soon. You guys are going to hear from us. I think a day after or probably 2 days after, the president said the same thing. And then on the third day, they came up with something totally ridiculous. We're all students here. We graduated from UG or going to UG and graduated from various other universities. We all know what a majority is. And it's something that has been used and practiced in our house for ages, as 33 being the majority. So this new, concoction that they're going to the court with, that you needed 34 and stuff like that, I don't believe in that.
But don't you think, they had a right to review?
Everyone has a right to review.
So they went to the Chief Justice to get a review.
Yes, they did. And she ruled the way she ruled. First off, they went to the Speaker for a review. And he said that he's holding to what he believes because it's the practice of...
That's Dr. Bartlett Scotland.
Yes, Dr. Bartlett Scotland. He said he's holding to what he believes because Resolution 101 has already been issued. And that's what he firmly believes. It's what's been practiced in the House since 1966. So then they went to the court, and the Chief Justice uphold the motion that's been validly passed and everything. They went to the Court of Appeal, and we have the vote 2 judges to 1 saying that it was 34 needed.
So why not wait until the CCJ rules and then move on from there? Don't you think that is the right course of action?
Well, as we are now, it's the only course of action we can go on because the government was supposed to hold an elections after the 24th of March. Which did not happen. They were deemed illegal for, I think, about 15 hours, 16 hours.
So as a young person, how do you feel about all this difference? It's changing every day. Today we're going north, tomorrow we're going south, the next day we're going east. How are you feeling about this?
Well, that's what I'm saying. As I start off saying, I don't believe that the government has been sincere with us. Just look at the past week. On Monday, there are several ministers that are dual citizenship. We all know that both courts rule that dual citizens cannot sit in our parliament. So we have the ministers saying that they have resigned their position, and that's all fine, and we thank you for your service and everything. And then the very next day, they said, oh, no, we haven't resigned. We're going to stay in place until certain processes have been completed, which, in my view, it's like 2 days to complete that process.
All right, let's move on to Renata. What is your thoughts on this whole period? It's a unique period for Guyana. We've never had a no confidence motion, so hence we're all learning from this. What are your
Agreed.
thoughts?
Agreed. It did. The political climate on, I guess it was December in 2018, was very hectic. Coming into January was also hectic, and persons didn't want to speak openly about it. But what I do and what I've been doing since I started Poetry way before is speaking on behalf of youths, because I'm there in that circle. I'm part of them. I am, representing them because I'm a youth. And to hear in terms of where they are placed, or where they come into play, they don't care. They do, but not to an extent, because if you realize everything going on, persons within 50 to over 60 age group, they're the persons very active, they're the persons talking and commenting. Nobody's asking the youths what they care or how they feel about that, or what's been done, or what it is that they believe should be happening. And in terms of the whole list and the revamping, and one party saying the list is good and one party saying, we need GCOM to be ready, and all of this happening, at no point in time is a person stopping to say, okay, so let's hear from the youths. What do they think about this? They're acting like the youths don't know what the Constitution says or how to read it, or more so like the youths are completely,
Logged off.
Exactly. Like, we're on a different planet. Nobody comes to the youths and asks them for anything unless you have to vote. Now, this is where I'm coming in with my point. So now the youths aren't, if I should say stupid, they know exactly what's going on. But when you choose to leave them out in important discussions that will affect their lives sooner or later, and then you only come to them when you need them for votes, they aren't interested. And more so, they will treat you the way you've been treating them, and they'll ignore it. So I feel as though where the youths are in this, honestly, a lot of them are worried about what's going to happen, but then it's not a panic for them, because they've always seen whereby you're in this country and everything going on in this country affects you also, but then nobody's asking your opinion. Nobody's asking you how you feel about this or your thoughts. So you're constantly being left out until you're needed. And that's
maybe also a lot of youths are also planning the exit strategy too.
To
the Caribbean or to North America. So also that's happening on the side.
Sure.
Kian, tough questions, but gotta ask it. What are your thoughts on this whole no confidence vote?
All right. Not to get too political, but I actually love it. I think it's something that really, really opened this country's eyes. And I'm not saying this because I am a fan of the former or the current. It's not a political conversation at all. It's more of we have an opportunity here to open our eyes as to what the issues are in the Constitution. All right. I think if the no confidence vote did anything at all, it put the Constitution itself on the forefront of our issues. So whether it be dual citizenship, whether it be the issues with what a majority is, or whether a majority exists, whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is, it's going to go to the CCJ. It went through the court process, in which the government and the opposition are more than allowed to do. It's within their rights. So you know what? We have to trust the system. Let it go through
the system.
And that's what it is. Okay, we respect whatever the ruling is. The CCJ, as decided by our Constitution, is the final say. When that's done, whatever their ruling is, we will abide by it. That's the law. All right. So what I do like, though, like as I mentioned, is that the Constitution has so many issues. All right. It's so old. They call it the
constitutional reform. That is what we need.
Constitutional reform.
Constitutional reform is okay. And I like what Renata said, where she made a comment just now saying, I don't think they know if we know how to read it. Well, the Constitution is written in plain English, so everyone can read it. Okay, that's why it's so easy to understand. So what I've done, actually, and I would encourage everyone to do it, is it took me like 30 seconds. I downloaded the whole Constitution on my phone. And every time now I read, Article 106 says this, Article 87 says this, blah, blah. I just very quickly go and reference it. I'm like, okay, and I see for myself and I interpret it on my own, because that's what laws are for our interpretation, right, individually. All right, so we're allowed to have our own opinions on it. But what we need to realize now is the more we get into the Constitution, is the more we realize it needs to change. All right, it needs reform. All right.
I'm in total agreement with that.
Definitely.
We need a new Constitution. It's very important.
It affects you when it's not benefiting you, but when it is, it's not affecting you. But it's still there, and there are still acts that persons no longer like. These are ancient things, and as a society, and you're changing, so does the Constitution. needs to change because it is governing a country. And if you're changing, it also needs to change. You don't start up a whole riot about it when it's not in your favor. And we see that happening.
Place now, right? And the fact of the matter is, the laws that they have set forth are not relatable. Do not.
Yeah, they're Asian. They're Asian.
Right. So what we're saying here now, though, is that what we've seen is that all the parties, every time somebody is going into election, they always have to say they sing the same songs. Constitutional reform. Why? Because and this is just, I'll give you a little insight from my personal view now that I'm a little bit more involved in the political arena, is that what happens is that the Constitution, when you are in the opposition, is awful because it gives you no power. It doesn't do anything for you. It's completely against everyone except for who's in government. And I think that's what our main issues are right now. As soon as any of these parties get into power, they immediately decide, you know what, let's put a hold on constitutional reform because this really helps me. This is working.
Rudy wanted to say something. I heard him. What did you want to say?
No, I was about to say that I don't quite agree with the views that the guys are expressing. I mean, I'm not against constitutional...
No, but it's good. We're open to views, so let me hear you.
From the onset, let me just say I'm not against constitutional reform, but what I'm saying is that we should first look to have constitutional compliance from whoever is there. Because it makes no sense us changing our constitution, then no one respects it at the first thing. So that's one of the first things. And excellent. Secondly, to respond to you, Kian, you're not totally hopeless in opposition, actually, because you have these, in Parliament, for example, the Constitution enables these standing committees, which is being chaired by the opposition. So, for example, you have the Public Accounts Committee that has to be chaired by an opposition. It's been there since 2001, since when they reformed the Constitution. So, yes, constitutional reform is important. Of course, as a society grows, we need to include more and more things that would reflect our society. But first, I would argue for compliance.
Constitution compliance. And on that note, Devin wants to come in. But before Devin comes in, I want to make this very clear. I don't know about others, but I am learning so much from you guys. And this is the point. This is a very fundamental point that is coming out. Nobody's listening to you, the 70%. But you got a powerful, powerful collection of information that is actually more unique, more powerful, more potent, and more helpful to the future Guyana. So I am hoping that all sides are going to be listening to this show and try their best to make sure that they tap into the young people. Devin, over to you. I heard you have some comments.
Hi. So Gopal Ramatar says the authorities are saying that crime is down, but every single day there are robberies all over the city and only a few are reported, mainly because of the low confidence in the law enforcement and the long drawn-out process one has to go through. He also says, I have been in GT and witnessed myself. You cannot walk in most parts with any form of valuables and feel safe. Shireen Shuraj says, in the country area, you can have all the CXC subjects. Then you have to go in the rice field and work. And you have a question.
I actually have a question that will, I'm hoping that all of you can be able to answer. And that is, since your percentage is more than 50%, you have the ability to change anything in Guyana. And since there's an election coming up, why don't you guys negotiate with either the parties directly to have a certain amount of position in the government, or from your own party and challenge the system the way it is? Because your numbers are there. SACE is quoting 70% of the voters are youth. So it is in your hands to make that decision.
70% of the population are youths. 55% of the voters list is young, is under 35.
That's even better. You're more than majority. So what it is, it means that you have the ability to make the change. Don't wait for someone to make it for you. It's in your hands. So give us a feedback.
Right. So Renata, you go first, and then Kian, and then Rudy.
All right, I like this question. For me, I'm thinking to myself, we had a town hall meeting held by a colleague of mine, Eden, earlier this year. And it was basically a set of young people coming to hear views and hear each other's views. And what we realized is in the whole idea of forming a political party. So I'll answer the question in sections, talking about joining a political party or getting in from the inside to change, and then forming your own party. In the aspect of forming your own party, there's a lot. It comes with you need a campaign, and in order for you to have a campaign, you need finance. Where are these monies coming from? Let's just highlight the fact that the majority don't even know that they're the majority, or more so, most of them don't care that they're the majority. So you have this whole host of youths who have the power and the ability to create change, but they don't know it to the extent, or more so, they're not working in that type of, they're not working towards that because everybody's doing their own thing. When it comes to creating your own party, like I said, funding is one of those things. So where are you getting it from? And if you get funding from somebody, let's say the private sector, the public sector, it always comes with something. So I give you this money, and if you win, or if you amount to a position, then I would need this, or I need you to do this for me. So there's always that. In the getting in of the party side, changing things from the inside or taking up positions within there, let's not be in denial, because when you join a political party or when you want to do that, you have to, adhere to certain rules. And then your morals more so might be changed or twisted because, as a young person, oftentimes your views aren't heard, or they aren't, taken into consideration. And then when you go there and you're being told that this party deals with this, and this is how we do things, we understand that you have ideas, but you need to follow the way we do things. And then it makes no sense. So it's just like you're adding numbers to a political party because your voice isn't being heard, your ideas aren't being taken into consideration and actually applied. That's why we have so many policies and programs, but nothing is actually being implemented. And that is where young people just, they lose interest because you go into a political party and you're told this, and then, before you know it, all of the things that you had or, all of the things you came with, they're gone because now you're one of them. And your views are changed, or your views change because of certain circumstances. And then getting your own party whereby persons aren't that committed, there's no funding. And then it takes years to do that. And young people seriously do not have the patience. Some of us do, and some of us want to. And I realized in myself, when you start a movement, and people will say that they got you and they're behind you and they're proud of you and all these other things. And when you go out on the road to, execute that movement, you don't find people. You don't see people. Yeah, the sun too hot. I didn't able. I had stuff to do. A bunch of mediocre excuses because they say one thing and they do another. So when you want to start a movement, you realize there's nobody moving with you. People are moving their fingers because it's easy to type. But there's nobody actually in the streets. Nobody's actually there with you. And that's just how it is.
Kian?
So this is an interesting question or an interesting conversation, because why I decided to get into politics and become a part of a new and United Guyana was actually the parking meter incident. All right. What had happened there is that was the first time I had ever seen in Guyana that so many people came together with the same opinion and the same motive and goal and actually affected change, created change. OK, like it really was a situation in which you got to see the power of the people in the country and that there are issues in which we can unite on. So where that takes me now is into the youth argument. And the conversation is, the next kind of big push that guided me into politics was exactly these figures that we're talking. If all of the youth between 18 and 35 came together with the same opinion and the same motive and all voted for one party, that party will not only get a few seats in government, they will win the election. Okay, they will become the government. All right. And I found that a phenomenal opportunity. And, I don't want it to be necessarily a realistic opportunity where youths just take over the country, because we need to be guided. OK, I can tell you in the party that I'm currently in, in which has Ralph Ramkaran and Henry Jeffrey and Timothy Jonas, people like them. It's for myself, it's an entire learning experience, because you need to know where you came from to know where you're going. All right. I firmly believe that. All right. So there's a place for everyone. But the fact of the matter is, I've gotten the opportunity now to sit at the big table, and I can tell you right now that there are other options that are coming about that I think we should, as youth, we should, one, either create our own movements like Renata had mentioned, or two, kind of force ourselves in, because this is what's happening now. We can no longer stand by and ask for permission. We have to step in now and say, no, we are the louder voice here, and you must listen to us.
Are you stepping up?
Yeah, I'm more in favor of the effecting change from within kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
I myself am a part of the PPP, People's Progressive Party, as well. I chose that party specifically after the 2015 elections because over the years I've been following them from abroad and stuff like that. But what I've noticed is that since 1992, having received power, they've always have a track record of involving youths. For example, the former president, Jagdeo, he was only in his late 20s, early 30s when he became a minister and then subsequently president of Guyana. Under his administration, they were the current presidential candidate, Irfaan Ali, was in his late 20s and giving a huge ministry to run. Priya Manikchand, the former Minister of Education, another big ministry, very important ministry. She was in her early 30s. Dr. Frank Anthony, early 30s, was given youth ministry, sports and culture, health at one time, stuff like that. And then in the Ramotsar era, when he was president, you have Mr. Nandlal, who was in his late 30s, being Attorney General of Guyana. So what I've noticed is that we always had they always had a history of involving youths. So that's why I chose to be with them and necessarily to bring my ideas to them. To have a.
But what would you like? What would you like changed in Guyana to make it more accommodating for this youthful population, this 70%? Rudy.
Well, to be honest with you, as I said, you need a voice. Young people need a voice. The majority of us don't have a voice. You have been neglected, as everyone else has been pointing out. And yeah, so there are many of these youth groups out there that claim to give you a voice, but I mean, how effective is it?
Now we're at 15 minutes after the hour. We're running on to the end of the program shortly, but let me ask a question, because growing up in Guyana, I've always had a great social cohesion experience. I grew up in South Georgetown, in Alexander Village, which is a mixed village. I went to Queens College and Bishop's High School, very mixed schools. I rode through, from Alexander Village through All Boys Town, big up to a man named Tops. These are all people from the inner city who always protected us as young people. I've never felt the kind of stuff that I'm seeing going on Facebook and social media, a war literally of our own family against each other. This is the reality. The reality today is Guyana is a land of minorities. There is no ethnic group that is a majority in Guyana. Indo-Guyanese are 39%, Afro-Guyanese are 29%, Amerindian Guyanese are 11%, mixed Guyanese and others 21%. So no one can say, hey, we are the 50%. We are a land of minorities. We have to work together or we die together. We sink together. So in your Guyana, in my Guyana, in your world, do you think there is a conflict today between the different ethnicities, or is it being manufactured by intellectual authors who are operating behind the scenes? I'm starting with you, Rudy, and then we go to Renata and then Kian.
From what I personally experienced, there's no tension among the youths per se where it comes to race. We've been coexisting throughout my entire life living in Guyana. I've been coexisting with all other races, and I don't see any tension between us. But with that said, they are, as you mentioned, persons out there who have been writing and saying that, race relations is deteriorating and stuff like that. But personally speaking, I haven't seen that among the youths.
Renata?
I have to agree with Rudy. I haven't also, because I grew up in on the East Coast, Better Hope, Pleasance, and For persons who do know, Better Hope is, it's mixed. You have Afro-Guyanese, you have Indo-Guyanese, and, my second mother is Indian, and all these. So it's just like I grew up with social cohesion. I grew up talking to everybody. Everybody's my brother and my sister. There was never anything with race. But amongst the young people, I don't see that happening. I don't see young people being annoyed at the fact that this person's Indo-Guyanese or, threatening this person because of their ethnicity. But what I do know for a fact is that people aren't born, to be racist. They're taught that. Not. Mm-hmm. So most times you hear growing up that, any good coolie is a dead coolie, and you hear this from black parents or persons talking about Afro-Guyanese in a bad way because of what some kind of track history. So you see that, and then as an individual, you're growing up and you're hearing that and you're projecting that. You don't actually believe that. You don't know that for certain, but your parents are saying these things or the people around you are saying this. So you get that, and I feel like those are the persons who grow up into adults and they're mean and they're bitch and they project that type of hatred on you. Do I see it as because a lot of people say Ghana is racially divided, and it has been for a very long time. But amongst the youths, I do not see that happening at all. I feel if one person is struggling with some issue or one person is, being faced with an issue, all of us come to support, all of us discuss, all of us talk, all of us protest in our own ways for that person. It has nothing to do with what they look like or, their ethnicity. If you're facing suicide or, people come together, and that is what I see in the youths. The older folks, I can't talk on behalf of them because everybody is, spewing hate speech. People are angry. People are saying things. And it's almost like they're in a bubble, not knowing that, okay, when you're done, you pass this down to this generation and they pass that down to that generation. And this is how things work. So for me, like Rudy rightfully said, it's not within the youths. I don't see that happening at all, but it is in the atmosphere, to be honest.
Kian?
I could not tell you how much I loved what I just heard. Like it really, I mean, we have not spoken at all. None of us, have had any education about this previous to this interview. We're all youths. And we all have the exact same opinion. I'm sorry, racism does not exist to the youths of Guyana. It is something that's introduced to us and encouraged for us to take part in, but it's ridiculous because we go to school with everyone, right? All the way up, even into our workforce. And then all of a sudden we get to the age of, of politics, all right? And being involved with these type of conversations. And then all of a sudden race becomes like a topic. And you kind of go, why? How is this? Where did this even come from? You've never mentioned this maybe before, but now all of a sudden I need to vote along the color of my skin. That's craziness, right? Mm-hmm. So, and what's happening is it's a sad cycle that all the generations above us are now introducing to us. And the fact of the matter is, as they both mentioned, it is starting to rear its ugly head to us because it's being pushed onto us, and some people will give in and it'll become reality because that's all they know. And it all actually stems from a lack of education, as we know, because it's not the educated and exposed ones that are walking around going, oh, all Indo-Guyanese and all Afro-Guyanese think the same way. That's not how it works, right?
But it also is about power, and people use devious means to secure that power. But I want to define two terms that Harvard University revealed to me when I was doing some research around it. Ethnicity, Harvard University said, is the belonging to a social group that has a common culture. And then they said racism is the belief that a member of a particular group believes they possess a superior quality to another racial group. So I do not believe that anybody's walking around Guyana with the conception that, I got a bluer blood than you. I am absolutely convinced even the older guys are not thinking like that, even though they're the ones who are using, as I said, mechanisms to keep everybody on a boat so that we can say you on my boat so that we can win this election. It's about, but I am happy that this conversation is happening because it reveals one thing. The young people really understands what is happening in Guyana. And I believe it's extremely important that the young voice be given more mainstream time on Guyana TV and Guyana radio. And I'm hoping Stabroek News and Demerara Waves are listening to this and giving you guys greater space, because you demand that pound of flesh. But Devin, I want to go to the live audience to find out if there's any closing questions from them, because I don't, this is about the world. So let's hear what the audience out there have to say. Devin, you have any questions?
I do have a two-part question from two different individuals. And from Gukaran Ruplal, he says, traditionally for over 50 years, Guyanese have a great fear of enjoying a level playing field regarding employment due to ethnicity and assumed political affiliation. This government has a great chance to change that, will they? And from Dai Jai Mangal, he says, what strategy do you have to get the youths to empower the youth?
All right. Start with you, Kian Jabour.
To be honest with you, I think all the governments, past and present, have had the opportunity to unify this whole country and bring everyone together. And I mean, one of the strategies that we look at in our new party is, shared governance. I mean, one of the concepts to bring the country together is to show that the people leading the country are working together and are unified in themselves. And that could be a strategy in which, will trickle down very quickly down to the public when, like I said, you're not trying to divide and conquer, because I mean, I understand that the strongholds are what are keeping these parties in power and drink the soup that they're fed. But the fact of the matter is, we're becoming a lot more exposed and educated now, and we're seeing different ways to come together and work together. And we're realizing that, as Renata and Rudy may have mentioned, is that we're much, much stronger together. And you said yourself, Says, we're on this boat together. It's either we row in one direction or the boat's sinking.
It will sink. Right? It will sink. It is actually not progressed because we couldn't get the model right. I mean, I'll give you an example. In 1950, Singapore and Guyana had the same GDP per capita, which is wealth per person. This is the challenge, around $330. Singapore now went to over $55,000 per person. Guyana is still about $6,000. So it meant that we failed at the model. But I mean, we got a second chance to do it. Let's see what happens. But anyway, continue.
Sorry. So I think what we're missing in society is a public opinion. All right, and we sit down, and I think, because of our economic situations and our societal situations, is that we're really realizing that we all have different interests and we all have different priorities. But what I think we need to realize is, and hold one head on, is that there are some basic, bits of our society and of our country that we all can come and hold one head on. And, unemployment, crime, corruption. I mean, when it comes to domestic abuse, violence, things like that, these social areas, we can hold one head. And because as much as it might not affect us today, I promise you at some point in your life in Guyana, it will affect you. So if we all can put our own personal issues aside just for 2 seconds and come together and say, hey, I'm not affected by corruption right at this very second, but it has to be changed. Hey, we're not affected by abuse. I haven't been hit by someone in a long time. But, I'm sure you have a cousin or a friend that has. We have to realize that we're all affected, race aside, by the same issues. So we can't keep walking around thinking that, oh, I have my problems and they have their problems, and then I'm going to fight for my fight and they fight for their fight. We're too divided, and that's our issues.
All right, so we have Renata and then Rudy. Renata?
There's two questions. So in terms of if I think this government can, I don't know, create that type of change, I'm not sure. I feel I'm always unbiased. A lot of people think I am, but I'm always unbiased because of the fact that time reveals a lot of things. And like we mentioned early in the discussion, you needed a no confidence motion to shake up an entire country to realize that, things can switch and change in the click of a finger. So you need to do right by the people. And more so, I am not sure if they can or, if they will, but we're hoping that this is not personal, that you don't do this for phase, that you're doing this because this country needs that. And in terms of what young people can do to encourage and empower other young people is hold ourselves accountable. I feel as though we see it oftentimes. Most politicians don't, have accountability. They do things without, without saying, oh, well, without acting as though they aren't, in terms of position. Like, the people aren't the persons that put them there, and they're doing things regardless, or not taking the people into consideration. So in terms of young people, I feel as though, like like Kian said, you need to encourage each other, but more so realize that, this is a boat and we're all here together. You don't only talk about something when it's affecting you personally. When it's affecting the wider majority, you talk about it. You don't wait until something happens to you and then you want to fight for it. And more so, you don't dismiss other people's struggle. If persons are, protesting against the health system because they feel it has been, unjust to them, but you're receiving good health and you think, oh, why are these people protesting? You don't have the right to do that. But more so in order to hold one head, because technically we are, the majority, to hold one head and then, fight for what you actually believe in. I tell people oftentimes, especially people my age, you fight for this now, you win it for your nephew or, your son or persons coming. You don't get to say, oh, this has nothing to do with me, as though you are not going to have another generation coming for you. And in my fight, I'm fighting for my nephew. I'm fighting for him to have the right to, a good education. I'm fighting for him to have the right to a job without looking at his skin complexion or his color and all these other things. And I feel like that is the important factor. And if youths know that they're needed, I feel youths just don't feel as though cared for much. They don't feel included in all of these things. So they just have this laid back type of mentality. And I feel we need to encourage each other and say, you're important. Your vote is important. Your voice especially is very important. And nobody gets to dictate, that from you. You're the one that gets to say, all right, this is happening. I don't like this. I feel like this should happen. And within that town hall meeting, forgive me for being long-winded, we specifically said that the youths, because the youth needs to be the watchdog. So when you tell me that you're creating this policy and this is going to be done at this time, and when that time passes and I don't see it being created, I'm not waiting on the media or Gordon to highlight it. I'm, writing in a post and I'm tagging all my friends so they can share, because social media is the going thing. You said this is going to be done, this. We haven't seen any work in regards to this project. What is going on? So the youths need to be included, and more so they need to want to be included, because it is their future. So that is how we encourage each other. That's how we keep the government accountable. That's how we keep persons accountable, because you're not going to say what you want to say and do what you want to do and think that, I'm just going to be laid back about it. So that is one of the things we need absolutely, like yesterday, to get going in terms of youths, to encourage each other, to be each other's keepers, to not tear down each other, to hold one head, because we all want one thing, and that's betterment for our country. If you're receiving oil and you're going to be one of the richest countries, in the world, more so, with a population this small, the possibilities are endless. But if everybody's fighting for different things, then you never get to win any wars or any battles for that matter. And everybody just remains sad in the end, and that's not what we want to see.
I want to just take in 2 fact points before Rudy comes in. There was a lady called Rosa Parks in the United States in the 50s. She decided not to sit in the back of the bus, which was reserved for Afro-Americans. She decided she has an equal right to any seat on that bus. She fought that struggle. She was ordinary, but because of that struggle, her grandnephew, which is not her biological grandnephew, but ideological grandnephew, Barack Obama, became president of America. So the point that you made about doing that struggle for your nephew, the benefits of it is down into the future. And the second thing that you raised about the wealth, there's a country called Equatorial Guinea. Found oil. Per capita, it's one of the richest countries in Africa. But guess what? All of that wealth resides in about 500 people's hands at the top. And the rest of the country lives in dirt poverty. The son of the president in Equatorial Guinea paid, I think, $2.5 million for the glove of Michael Jackson, but his people are starving. He has a whole fleet of European cars. So this is one of the risks that Guyana can face if we do not take control of becoming rational again. But Rudy, the question is pointed to you. I had to stick in those fact points.
Yeah, I'll take the second question first. I think it's the only one I remember at this point right now, about youth empowering youth. So the way that we can empower them is to get them more involved, as everyone has been mentioning. This, as Renato was saying, is not just for us, is not just for you're doing it for a political party or you're doing it for some parts of society, but you're doing it for the entire country. You're doing it for yourself, and you're doing it for future generations. So one of the best way for us to get youths more empowered is to get them more involved, get them to have their ideas out there. When they give their ideas, then everyone would know what exactly is the issues of the youths, and then we can work to solve it. So I think getting them involved is the best way to empower them.
Go on, sorry.
The other question, if I remember correctly, was to do with jobs in government. Yes. I am in no way, shape, or form for nepotism or cronyism in any political party or anyone that is in government. But I believe that the most suitable qualified person should get the job at all times, regardless of which political party they come from, what has been their choice in the past, or anything like that. And with that said, it's interesting that this question came up. I read that just yesterday, I believe, in the Starbuck News, that the minister has been giving contracts to her husband, which he then subcontracted to the actual contractors, and they haven't been paid as yet. So it just goes to show how far up the ladder it goes. It's not just, you can't get jobs with the private sector because someone is a friend of a businessman, but it goes all the way up into government. So there's something we definitely need to look at and reevaluate.
And that is why we need to strengthen the Constitution to make sure that these kinds of actions are penalized more actively and more aggressively by institutions that are independent of the government, so that politicians will not be able to interfere when, let's say, a procurement commission comes down and says, this is wrong, we're taking it to the court, and financial sanctions are applied to the people who are cheating the country. I believe that we need to understand that Guyana does not belong to any race. Guyana does not belong to any religion. Guyana belongs to all its people, and that is why the founding fathers came up with that theme of one people, one nation, one destiny. Because we either do it together or we don't do it.
Yeah. On that note, as you said, we're in our closing phase of the program. I just want
I'll give you a chance to make a closing statement, but go on.
Well, I'll make it now, and then probably later.
I'll give you a chance just now, because Devin has a poll that he would have taken during the audience. But before we go to that poll, I want to thank Globespan 27. They have paid for this, the engine behind this entire operation. I also want to thank Mr. Nohar Singh, the president of Globespan, and his team. And I'm deeply grateful to this operation because it continues to give Guyana a global outreach, which is really, really powerful. So Devin, I want to pass it over to you for the poll results, if you have them.
Yes, so throughout our broadcast, we have asked the online audience 2 questions. The first question is, should the youth participate more in politics? 93% said yes, and 7% said no.
Wow.
And the second question is there a future in politics for the youth? 82% said yes, and 18% said no.
Well, there you have your answers. You know what you got to do. The people, and you'll see the numbers when you watch this show later tonight. You'll see the numbers. It flies up to the thousands very, very quickly. But now we're at that point where I want to ask you all kindly, any final words? Let's start with you, Kian, because you go for it.
I love the polls. I like the results too. I like that. Should we get involved? Yes. Will we have a future if we get involved? Maybe. I like that number dipped a bit. So one of the ideas that I toyed with coming into getting into politics myself was that I believe that the power does need to be trickled back down to the people. And that's when I come with constitutional reform and what my vision of how the Constitution should change is that we should get back down to having, for example, constituency-based seats in parliament, all right, not necessarily seats along party lines. So, for example, I mean, whatever happened with Charandas happened, but the fact of the matter is, I don't think, Charandas coming from Berbice, he should have necessarily been in the position to be fired. What that basically says is that nobody has a voice of their own in the party, because the minute you don't follow party lines, you are discarded. You know what I mean? And that to me is a big issue. For why, if the Berbicians vote, a representative into the House, irrelevant to what party he is, he should be there to represent the Berbicians, not his party per se. Country first, party second, right? So his area is he's accountable to his people. And I think those are the type of little things that we need, well, not little, but large things we need to be taking into consideration and bring all of this power back down to the road to the people. Take a little bit away from the government, take a little bit away from the heads, the people in the top, and bring it back down and say, listen, we now have to have a voice in our areas. I'm sorry, a man in Georgetown can't tell a man in Linden what he needs. He's not there. He doesn't live that struggle every day. Vice versa. A man in Berbice can't tell a man in Essequibo what he needs, right? So when we sit down as a group in Parliament, it can't be us making decisions for people all over the place that we don't know what they need. And then the minute they start fighting for themselves and say something to represent their people, oh no, well, we don't agree with that, so you're going to be fired. We're going to replace you. That's not what democracy is, right? So that's kind of my closing statements. Is I think the people need to hold a public opinion that we need to take some of the power back. That should be the public opinion, okay?
Rudy, I'll go with you second, because we started the show with Renata and we'll be having her voice last. So let's go, Rudy.
What I was about to say earlier is that, we would have an election soon, one where the CCJ has already set the date for the hearing of these cases, the no confidence cases. Whether they rule that it was validly passed or not validly passed, we'll have an election soon. Either it's this year or next year. So you'd see a lot of these politicians come around to the youth and try to get them to vote and stuff like that. What I try to encourage, what I'm getting at, is to look at the track records of these parties. So most importantly, just don't hear the words and talk about these lofty promises that, oh, we love the youths and we're going to do X, Y, and Z for you. And then when they get power, they just forget youths. So look at the track record of these people, look what they have done in the past, look what they have been doing, and vote that way. Don't worry about race. So we spoke about race here as well. There will be some people coming to you with race as well. So don't worry about all of that. Just look at the track record. Look at who's listening to you as youths, who's taking your input seriously. And I think then make your decision.
Completely agree.
All right, Renata, final say.
All right. So, I do love the panel. Thank you guys for chiming. I really love the conversation. And I do also agree in terms of voting for who you believe in, who you honestly, who has policies that follows in line with what you think, and what you want to see happening. And I feel those are the lines we should always vote along. You don't vote for your grandmother's party because your grandmother wants you to vote for that party. You're here, you're living in this country, you know what's happening. You want to see this happen now. And the party is bringing that suggestion to you that, okay, we're going to do this. And you trust them enough, then that's where your vote should go. And I feel as though for us, because since this is about youths, I feel the involvement of youths is so critical when it comes to how this country proceeds along in terms of the future, in terms of all the investments that will be happening, in terms of, just building this country up to where it should be. And I feel youths need to be involved. And it's hard. For me personally, it's hard because people look at me and they think, I'm affiliated with one party. Or people look at me and they think, oh, why are you always talking about the bad? Why don't you highlight the good things that people are doing? The good things are there and we appreciate it, but I need to highlight things that's not necessarily bad, but more so that needs work. So when I did a piece called Broken System, I highlighted things that I go to that people aren't even, they don't know what's going on. Things like the juvenile center and how we can do Big Brother programs to speak to these kids that are there constantly. Kids whose parents abandon them and all they want is somebody there as a guardian or more so.
Can you give us a snippet of that broken system?
A broken system? We have 14-year-old girls being gang raped, boys being caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, children. running away from their homes because the ones that are supposed to be protecting them, they're now physically and sexually abusing them, molesting them, forgetting that they too are children. So the minute one of them gets ruled, we assume that they're juvenile delinquents, so we just put them in the system and forget them. Let the magistrate decide what she does with them. Either she sends them to some place that's worse than juvie, or she signs their rights over to the same persons that are abusive. How do we help them if our system is broken? Well, we're out here promoting something that's not even ours, like carnival. How much did you pay to buy another man's culture? One people, one nation, one destiny. That's always been our mantra, our motto. But our country has become a dog-eat-dog type of country. Survival of the fittest. The rich gets richer off the labor of the poor. Some Karl Marx type thing. We have no culture, but yet still we as the people wholeheartedly refuse to talk about it as though it's tabooed. But the only thing that we as Guyanese associate ourselves with is food. Not music, not language, definitely not language. Funny how our DJs prefer patois over Curlees. They were asked this question again. What do we as Guyanese associate ourselves with? I think that's all I remember. But in doing that
amazing.
In doing that, I highlighted stuff where you have sexual harassment being so rampant. You have suicidal case going up. You have people, making memes about people who commit suicide in Berbice as though that is somewhat funny. And we have all of these things going on. But then what are we doing about it? Aside from just talking, hands-on action needs to happen, and youths need to be more involved. Youths need not to say, oh, this doesn't concern me, because really and truly it does. Education, work, career, jobs, everything that's happening, it concerns them directly. So what they need to do is, put your ear to the ground. You know what's going on, so you can have fruitful discussions where we could sit down and not only talk about social media or the biggest sensation going on or who's performing at this show, but we could talk about, listen, I heard that, unemployment is going up. I feel like we should do internship for every student. You shouldn't only have internship for 5 students. You should have internship for every student and give them, because you put them in.
Germany has a system like that, so why can't it work here?
Exactly. And I like how you mentioned Singapore, because educational-wise, Singapore is on top of everything. And their structure is falling, and that is a democracy. And we claim to be a democracy, and there's so many things going on that doesn't fall into the word or the meaning of a democratic, country or society. So a lot of things needs to happen, but it needs to happen whereby we're not ignorant of the fact, and we're not lazy in terms of getting change. Like Michael Jackson said, if you want change, you need to be the person to change more so, and then you get up and you go out and you do it. Because you can talk the talk, but you also need to walk the walk, and I realize that a lot of us don't do it. And I feel like that is where it starts for us, in getting up and holding these people that you yourself got up 5 o'clock in the morning. Oh God, people is vote 5 o'clock in the morning. Ooh, get up and vote. And you go out there and you have them accountable. Listen, I put you there. We put you there. So if we're asking for our drains to be cleaned every month, we would like to see that happen. And more so as a community, you don't wait for the government to come in and do all these other things. You start doing them yourself. And then you seek out to them and you come to them with a contingency plan. We started doing this. We started doing this. We started doing this. The youths are doing this. We need funding for this. Let us know. And you beat on them like white on rice. Because that is your job. That is where you need to see change, and that is what you're going to do. You don't say, all right, good, the government said they're going to do this, and wait a year and then you complain. No. You said this is the deadline. We're waiting. We're still waiting. We are here because this is what we want. Social media is your platform. The government said they were going to do something and they didn't, or the Democratic Council said they're cleaning drains and they didn't. You plaster that all up there because people are always trying to save face, and you're accountable to the people. And that's what I want politicians to know, that you're accountable to the people. So you do what is right by them and for them. It's not personal, nor should it be selfish. And I feel like that is where Ghana would start seeing change and improvement. And, everything has a domino effect. So you fix certain things, you put certain things in place, and things start falling into place, and it starts falling right. And that's how we function.
Let's give each of you a round of applause. You did fantastically well. My final word, Renata said, do right by the people. Rudy said he demands constitutional compliance. And Kian said, we the youths must hold our head together. On that note, this is Sais Narayan Singh signing off. And thank you very much for signing on for us. Good night and goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.